Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. Well, as you probably know, the New York Times dropped a huge bombshell over the weekend about Trump's tax returns. They apparently were able to get a hold of over 20 years of his tax returns, both personal and business, and they released some of the findings. So it's so much. I've broken it down into three different segments, and this is part one. So in this part, I'm going to go through the top line takeaways regarding his finances. But as you probably also know, even if you live in another country, Trump has been fighting against the release of his tax returns since he took office, even though he repeatedly promised that he would release them if he became the nominee. And of course, we all knew it was a stall tactic. And now we know why he has been so terrified of his tax returns being revealed. There's three bottom lines for me, really. Number one, Trump is a complete fraud. I mean, that's nothing that we didn't know, but now we know exactly how much of a fraud he really is and a loser. I mean, it's never been more clear. The guy would have nothing if it wasn't for his daddy giving him over $400 million. The second takeaway or biggest bottom line for me is that our system is easily exploited by the corrupt and wealthy, and those of us who play by the rules get screwed. It's that simple. The other thing, my other biggest takeaway is that we absolutely must shore up the laws and guidelines surrounding people who take positions of power in our country. This needs to be done. This needs to be done across the board to prevent conflicts of interest, because they put all of us at risk, and they affect, whether you realize it or not, they affect our lives and our livelihood. And so I'm going to be touching on that in another segment based on Trump and his family's conflicts of interest, which are myriad. But it's unbelievable that so much of this is allowed and legal right now in our country. So here are the biggest bombshells that were revealed in this New York Times article. First of all, Trump only paid $750 in taxes in 2016 and approximately the same amount in 2017. He also paid zero in income taxes in 10 out of the previous 15 years. So while you and I are paying a huge portion of our income in taxes, this guy who claims to be a billionaire is paying little to nothing, literally. And if you think that he's great and intelligent for doing that and you don't have a problem with it, you're being a freaking hypocrite. You're a partisan hypocrite. Because if the same thing had come out about Obama or the Clintons or even Bush, people would be outraged. Because guess what? When everyone doesn't pay their fair share, the people who are being honest and do file legitimate tax returns and play by the rules, they're the ones who make up for those shortfalls. You and I make up for those shortfalls. Or what we end up hearing is people on both sides of the aisle, but primarily the Republicans, trying to take away things like Social Security and Medicare, things that we've paid into our entire lives. They try to take them away because, oh gosh, we're just short. We're coming up short. We got to cut whatever we can. How about you cut the loopholes that allow these greedy bastards like Trump to get away with paying nothing? That's what should be cut. On top of all that, Trump received a $72.9 million tax refund that has been in dispute for the last 10 years. And I'll get to what that's all related to in a minute. But if he loses the battle with the IRS, he would owe more than $100 million. Now, you would think that would be a drop in the bucket for a billionaire. But as you're going to hear, it's actually something he can't afford. The guy is broke. What they reported is that some of the most lucrative deals that he had over the last decade or so came from The Apprentice. He made $427.4 million from The Apprentice between his direct salary that they were paying him and his licensing and endorsement deals related to the show. And as part of his 2018 financial disclosures, which are part of his responsibility, he has to report that every year as president of the United States, Trump showed income of $434.9 million. Again, sounds like a ton of money. You're going to hear exactly why it's not accurate and why it's all a shell game. So, Trump's business tax returns for the same year showed a loss of $47.4 million. So he's got millions coming in, but he also has huge losses. And for some reason, Trump's expenses for his Bedminster Golf Club mysteriously increased fivefold after he became president. So all of a sudden, he's reporting these huge losses. And this is before COVID. Now, with the exception of Mar-a-Lago and commercial and retail rental space in Trump Tower, all of Trump's businesses report losing millions to tens of millions of dollars every single year. In fact, more than 100 million in losses was reported just between 2013 and 2014. And Trump's debts, and this is why I'm saying it's all a shell game and it's not accurate and he is actually broke, his debts equal 421 million. On top of that, a good portion of those loans are personally guaranteed. And these loans, the vast majority of them are due. They come due over the next 4 years. So while we've been thinking that Trump primarily wants to win the election and will do anything and everything, including taking illegal actions to stay in office, primarily to keep himself out of jail, it appears that it's also because of financial risk. Because it's a lot easier to get these companies and these lenders to refinance or to extend your loan terms or work with you somehow if you're president of the United States than if you are out of office, facing criminal charges, and also on the verge of financial collapse and have no real source of income coming in because your debts outweigh whatever it is that you're taking in profit. And one of the loans that he has is a $100 million loan that he took out on Trump Tower in 2012. So that's really like the centerpiece of the Trump family and the Trump organization. I mean, imagine if he lost that property. How humiliating would that be? And as I just said, he gets a lot of his money from retail space in that Trump Tower. So he would lose a huge source of his income if he loses that property. Now, since 2012, he has paid interest only on the loan. He has paid nothing towards the principal. So even though that loan is 8 years old, it still remains at $100 million. And it has a balloon payment that comes due in just 2 years. That balloon payment is due in 2022, actually less than 2 years because we're coming up on 2021. So in just over a year, he owes $100 million. And you're going to see, again, it sounds like a drop in the bucket to a billionaire, but he doesn't have the money. There's no money unless he sells everything he owns. which brings me to this point. His businesses show only 34.7 million in cash on hand. So liquid assets that he can use is a total of 34.7 million. And remember, he has 100 million on that one loan, 421 million in total. A good indicator of how Trump is feeling squeezed by all of this debt is that he has sold almost all of his stock. In fact, he has only $873,000 left in stock. And he's saying how great the stock market is doing. If he's really that wealthy and the stock market's doing so great, why isn't he investing in it? Why is he instead dumping stock? According to this New York Times report, in 2014, he sold $98 million in stock. In 2015, he sold $54 million in stock. And in 2016, he sold $68.2 million. And again, he's using this money to cover the losses on his businesses. It's not like he's selling the stock and putting it in the bank. He's having to use it to shore up his losses for his incompetence in running his businesses, like we've seen him running the country for the last almost 4 years. And Trump's Miss Universe pageant, which he just loved because he loved to go backstage and look at all of the women in their underwear or naked. And that's not me saying it. He said it himself. Trump lost money every year that he hosted that pageant, with the exception of 1 year. The year that Russian billionaires Emin and Aris Agalarov got involved and helped pay for the event. In that year, which was 2013, Trump made a profit of over $2 million. Now, all businesses run solely by Trump. All of the businesses run and managed by Trump posted huge, huge losses. So for example, Doral Resort in Florida, Trump paid $150 million for that property in 2012. Between 2012 to 2018, his tax returns showed losses on the Doral golf course of $162.3 million. So losses equal to more than what he paid for it. He also put $213 million into that property, on top of the $150 million that he paid for it. And the property has a $125 million mortgage on it that's due in 3 years. So that's part of that over $400 million that's due. How is he going to refinance it? If you show no income on your tax returns, if you show losses every year and you show no source of income, how do you get a loan? Lenders don't lend to you, and lenders don't lend to Trump in general. They stopped lending to Trump years ago because he stiffed so many of them and refused to pay his debts and kept filing for bankruptcy, or he would sue them to get out of paying them. Which, by the way, funny story in Michael Cohen's book about the Doral Golf Club. Trump hired a painter to paint the interior of the Doral property because it was in disrepair when he purchased it, which is why he got it for so cheap. He, as Michael Cohen puts it, had a cheap attack. And he decided to use the lowest level of paint. He used a Benjamin Moore paint, and there's various levels to the quality. Trump wanted to do it for as cheap as possible, so he told this painter to use the lowest grade paint. Now, the painter warned him that that was not the proper type of paint for such a high traffic type of property. But no, Trump had to do it the cheap way. So once they painted the entire interior, not only did Trump stiff the painter and was refusing to pay him just for no reason, just wasn't paying his bills, and Michael Cohen had to tap dance with that, but the paint started wiping off of the walls. As it was being cleaned and the walls were being wiped down, the paint was getting splotchy. So rather than Trump owning up to the fact that he cheaped out on it and didn't want to pay to have the job done right, he decided to sick Michael Cohen on Benjamin Moore, and they threatened to sue the paint company. So Benjamin Moore, of course, said, hey, according to the paperwork, you guys got the lowest level. That's not the right type of paint, blah, blah, blah. Michael Cohen went ballistic on them, even though he said, even at the time, he knew he was wrong. He knew he and Trump were in the wrong, but he went ballistic and threatened them with bad press and lawsuits. And so what do you know? Benjamin Moore decided to cave, and they gave Trump all free paint. The high-level, durable, commercial type of paint that he should have purchased in the first place. So he got paint for the entire job for free. So I digress. I just thought that was an interesting story. So in addition to the losses on Doral Golf Club, Trump posted $315.6 million in losses at his golf courses in Scotland and Ireland since 2000. He has posted a $55.5 million loss for his DC hotel. He has had losses of $134 million for the Trump Corporation, which is listed as a real estate services company. And as I said, to cover these losses, he has continually pumped cash into the businesses. So this is not, he's such a great businessman and he's so good at manipulating the system, which is gross and illegal by itself, or should be illegal, even if it's not. This is a man who is a horrible business person. This is someone who doesn't know what he's doing. He is having to take money, assets, and cover these losses. If it were truly just a tax trick and him manipulating the system, he wouldn't have to cover those losses because they wouldn't be real losses. And Trump has tried to pretend like, oh, well, I show losses on my tax returns because that's just depreciation. And yeah, I've owned property. Yes, anybody who's owned property, especially rental property or business property, you're able to depreciate the property over time. These losses were in addition to the write-offs for depreciation. On top of all this, there was $287 million in debt that Trump wrote off because he was unable to pay the lenders back. So when you write off debt, when debt is forgiven by a bank or whomever, the IRS considers that to be income. You have to show that on your tax returns. So he's supposed to be a billionaire, but he can't pay $287 million in debt. He can't pay his bills and keep his word. And in 2015, Trump paid, for the first time in 5 years, he actually paid $641,931 in federal taxes. So he hadn't paid any federal taxes from 2010 up until 2015. Again, a billionaire. So-called billionaire. Now, Trump, who loves to slam Obama and just is such a freak about Obama that literally in Michael Cohen's book, he talks about and actually shared pictures of Trump being so obsessed with Obama that he brought in what they called a faux Obama, and Trump basically got out all of his animosity towards Barack Obama by firing the faux Obama. So he had this black man come into his office, sit across from his desk, which is what the picture is, and he berated him and talked down to him and then fired him. I mean, obviously not it wasn't a real employee, but this was just Trump's way of, a rich man's way of getting out his animosity towards someone who just got under his skin. So Trump has such an issue with Obama, yet Trump benefited from a 2009 Obama era tax change that Obama put in place during the Great Recession. So what this change did was it allowed Trump to request and receive a refund for taxes paid from 2004 to 2008, all of the taxes he had paid, plus 50% of the taxes paid in 2003. So Obama put this in place, of course, to give relief to people because we were going through such a horrible recession. So it just so happens that in that time period, Trump actually had paid some taxes because that was when The Apprentice was doing so well. That was when The Apprentice was really going strong. So he had made quite a bit of money over that period of time. So the 2005 and 2006 taxes that Trump had paid, he was able to get back. That's what created this dispute over his 72 million plus tax refund in 2009. That's what this whole thing has been about for the last 10 years that he's been fighting. So Trump's 2009 tax return showed losses of over 700 million that he wasn't able to write off in the previous years. And then he took advantage of that Obama era tax break and got back over 72 million as a refund. But he's a billionaire. He's one of the wealthiest people in the world. So a couple other things that they noted: Trump wrote off $70,000 in hairstylist costs while he was working on The Apprentice. Really, I mean, the guy seriously needs to ask for a refund if that's the best they can do. And another little tidbit from Michael Cohen's book, he calls Trump's hairstyle the flip, flap, flop. He says that that's essentially how he does his comb over. It's like a 3-step process. And the reason that Trump has to do that is not only because he's going bald, and he looks at that as a sign of his masculinity being in question and, you know, him losing his virility. But on top of that, Trump, according to Michael Cohen, don't know how real this is, but according to Cohen, he has scars all over his head from a botched hair transplant procedure that he had done when he was married to Ivana. And apparently that was what spurred his anger and allegedly caused him to beat her that one time that she claimed that he beat and raped her. So don't know how real that is, but that's what he claims in the book. The other detail, not that important, but still it's just gross, is that almost $96,000 was written off in payments to one of Ivanka's favorite hair and makeup artists. Oh my God, so ridiculous. But, you know, they make clear that these tax returns are only representative of what he reported to the IRS. And so they're not necessarily the truth about what he does or doesn't have. But Trump has been rage tweeting about this, and one of his attorneys alleges that Trump has paid millions in personal taxes. Of course, he notes personal, not business. So, but here's the thing: Trump could clear all this up. If Trump claims that it's all wrong, it's all fake and false, release your tax returns. He promised and promised. So this is just another one of Trump's promises made, promises not kept. Like lock her up, like Mexico's going to pay for the wall. I mean, the guy is just a pathological liar and a sociopath. That's all there is to it. He's not going to release his tax returns. And then there's still a segment of the population that's still going to buy his bullshit, even knowing that this guy has been literally using a shell game and to pretend that he's wealthy, when he's actually in debt up to his eyeballs. And poor little Melania is not going to get her payoff. And so she had to sleep with that ogre for nothing. Ugh, God. Oh, well. I don't really care, do you? Womp womp and thoughts and prayers for Melania. All right, guys, as always, like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you soon, and stay tuned for the next segments. Thanks for listening to Plants and Politics. The only way we can take our country and power back is to spread the truth and build an army. So remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again.